Hello and welcome to Contaminated History. Today's topic, vaccines. Vaccines have returned to the forefront of the media lately amidst isolated outbreaks of mumps, measles, polio, and, of course, Ebola, with these outbreaks taking place across the U.S. The result is a debate over what is at fault for these outbreaks. How well do vaccines really work? Are parents right to believe in reports that children who get vaccinated tend to be less healthy? Or do diseases survive because many parents refuse to vaccinate their kids? While we may not be able to find the answers to these questions, an exploration through the history of vaccines can give us an idea of how vaccines became the #1 way to stop the spread of infectious disease. Smallpox was a deadly disease that had killed millions all over the world for centuries. It even played a big role in the destruction of a few empires. The Europeans brought it over to the Americas, where it became a deadly weapon against the Aztecs. It also helped take down the Romans. An epidemic coincided with the fall of the Roman Empire. To combat this disease, a process called variolation was practiced in Asia as far back as 1000 BC. Variolation is the process of infecting a subject with a weakened form of smallpox, hoping that the subject would survive and develop immunity. This practice was not introduced to Western civilization until Lady Montagu brought it to Britain in 1717. Variolation, however, was still rather dangerous. The recipient of variolation still experienced the overwhelming symptoms of smallpox, and there was still a fatality rate of 0.5% to 2%. Edward Jenner found a viable alternative method of vaccination in 1796, when he noticed that milkmaids that contracted cowpox appeared to have immunity to smallpox. So Jenner had a hypothesis that he could introduce immunity to the deadliest disease in history, using cowpox as a vaccine, cowpox being a non-life-threatening disease. He just had to test it. In the test, he infected the subject with cowpox to create immunity, and then infected the subject with smallpox to test that immunity. The result, if his hypothesis was not correct, would be death for the subject. So, naturally, his first subject was a young boy. Fortunately for Jenner, the risk paid off. The young boy showed no symptoms of smallpox. Based on this one successful test, Jenner pushed all of Britain to vaccinate in this manner. Jenner's cockiness and confidence paid off. Despite Jenner's theory being rejected for a lack of evidence, Jenner relentlessly promoted vaccination. The idea spread and smallpox was eventually eradicated. Despite Jenner's success, no one really understood the science behind vaccinations. Even 75 years later, little was known about how they worked. Louis Pasteur developed a theory that disease was caused by germs, tiny organisms that attack humans from outside of the body. Pasteur performed tests which showed that infecting the body with weakened forms of a germ could create immunity to that germ. This discovery was made somewhat by accident when Pasteur infected chickens with cholera bacteria that had spoiled, resulting in their immunity. What was different from Jenner's discovery was that the vaccines had been artificially generated. Pasteur's research in artificially generated vaccines helped defeat chicken cholera and rabies. Another deadly disease defeated by vaccination, at least in the Americas, was polio, a virus that physically disabled and sometimes killed its victims. Though 98% of polio cases occurred as a non-paralyzing, non-life-threatening illness, there was no disease that parents feared more for their children in the first half of the 20th century. I've discussed several diseases that have been defeated by vaccines, and even though there is significant controversy over vaccines, it can't be denied that they have been responsible for the eradication of several pandemic, deadly diseases. And doctors continue to recommend vaccination for diseases such as tetanus and the flu. But do vaccinations result in positive health outcomes in our present society? Well, that's for you to decide.